All right, Bulls and Bears, thank you for joining me today. I just received an email within the last 24 hours. And I usually don't go out and say things like this because it's kind of going out on a limb. But I received this email, and the person behind it is telling me, and this is open to interpretation. Believe it if you want to believe it, don't believe it if you don't want to believe it. But listen to what's being said here and see if it makes sense to you. All right. So this is a supposed high level person. They did give me their name, but I'm not going to say it. Who knows? There could be NDAs or non disclosure agreements, things like that. But this source is telling me that there's going to be a concerted effort amongst many, many different countries to dethrone the dollar, not just the BRICS detail that we've been hearing about, but it involves the BRICS countries and the BRICS alliance, right? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into the details. We'll start with that because I know a lot of people tune in for kind of the important piece. Sometimes I get to other stories before that and I go get back to it, later in the video. Let's go ahead and get started right with that information. So this email is telling me something that I've heard here and there, but I wasn't able to confirm it. And I usually don't get emails out of the blue like this. And because I don't have that big of an influence. So anyone in a maybe even high up position or semi high level position probably is going to bigger channels instead of mine. But I just thought I'd put it out there as something to think about. I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen. This email could be just somebody making stuff up. But when you listen to what's being presented, I just want you to connect the dots, add two and two together. Does it make sense? Do you think it's a possibility, right? So we all know about the BRICS nations going outside of the dollar. They're going to have their own basket of currency, is what we're being told. There's going to be a big BRICS conference coming up in October. It's going to be this year, October 22nd to October 24th. And that's when there's going to be an announcement, or it could be something more dark and something more sinister. Now, to some people, it may seem dark and sinister. To other people, it may seem like the light at the end of the tunnel. So, what I've been told here, and again, this is a source that I can't really say if it's true or not, but it sounds legit to me. But even I take things with a grain of salt. I ask myself, does it make sense? Who would take the time to write this email? What would they get out of it? And it was a long email. It took me like almost 10 minutes to read through the whole email. What would somebody get out of just somebody sending me, or what would the person that sent this to me, what would they get out of taking the time to write kind of a long email for no reason, right? So maybe there's some truth, maybe a lot of truth behind this, right? So we know the BRICS nations looking to go outside of the U.S. dollar with their own basket of currencies. And I've heard other people talk about this plan, and we'll talk about what I've been told the plan likely is. But I've heard other people online talk about this plan. I've never really repeated it or brought it to you guys, to my viewers here. One particular person that's spoken about this is Andy Scheckman over at Silver Slayer, and there's others too. I just can't think of the other ones right now. I can't think of the names of the other channels. And the one I saw maybe was a few weeks ago, the most recent one. So check out Silver Slayer if you guys haven't already. Tell them, give them a shout out from Bull Boom. Tell them that we talked about him. But that's not my source. My source is giving me more information than I've ever heard from any other video or any other information that I've read or any video that I've watched. So here's the gist of it. I'm going to try to summarize everything in a shorter fashion for you. We know the BRICS nations are working on a currency called the BRICS basket. Will it be gold backed, or will it just be gold and other commodities combined with fiat currencies? We'll see. This new currency dubbed as the BRIC to facilitate trade transactions amongst themselves. Now, a lot of this isn't just an anonymous email. A lot of this is confirmed. We already see a lot of the nation's leaders already came out and they've already said a lot of what we're going to talk about here today. So a lot of this is already confirmed. But when we get into the meat of the what I think is the big threat here, and again, it may not be a threat to you depending on how you're positioned, right? If you're already positioning yourself for the decline of the dollar, this may be awesome news to you. If you haven't accumulated any silver, you haven't made any plans, no preparations, this may be some pretty shocking and concerning news to you. Either way, there is likely going to be, and this is my source saying this, a concerted effort to dethrone the dollar, not just what we've seen, but a sudden push, a sudden sell off, right? This is described as a potential, quote, night of the switch. That's the way it was worded, night of the switch, where countries would abruptly move away from the US dollar to their new BRIC currency or whatever it ends up being called, upending the existing financial order. And this is the de-dollarization that could come in an instant, and this would be around 100 countries around the world that would simultaneously sell off trillions of dollars of US dollar denominated debt in treasuries. And this would be an instant, what's being called a backbreaker of the US dollar. So let's step back and let's think about this. Okay, so if these countries, 100 plus now, that are either in the BRICS or looking to join the BRICS, that are tired of the US dollar's reserve, not just the currency status or the reserve status. They're tired of the way it's being used. They see what's happening and what's happened to many other countries with the sanctions, with the seizure of assets, with the invasion of these other countries with armies, U.S. armies, other countries that didn't do what we wanted them to do. So you could just look at the facts, just look at what's already happened. You could say that, okay, these countries have a very good reason to want to get away from the dollar and, more importantly, the control mechanisms of the US dollar. So it makes perfect sense there. That's a no brainer. Countries have already told us that. We already know what the BRICS nations are saying they're going to do. Now, will they do what they're saying they're going to do? That's up to you to decide. But will there be a simultaneous dump of US debt as a sneak attack, right? So think about war. In a war, let's say a hot war where you have drone strikes, you have, who knows, you have missiles, boots on the ground, etc. A hot war. Um, does the country that's going to do the attack, do they telegraph it? Do they let everybody know in advance, hey, we're going to strike over here? We've seen countries actually do that, the US being one, and then they warn people to get out, which makes no sense. But the countries that are actually in it to win it, so to speak, do you think they're going to telegraph every move, or would they want to make some sort of surprise attack? Or do they want it to be a shock? Remember shock and awe? What was that, 20 years ago in the Middle East? Shock and awe. You would think that if they really were serious about the war and winning, it would be a surprise attack or shock and awe type of thing where everything happens at once, a massive set of strikes. Who knows, maybe even a big, what was that called? Moab, mother of all bombs. So if that were to be true, if you really think there's countries out there that are organizing to potentially do damage, in this case, damage to the US and the US dollar, then you would have to believe that they would want to do something big all at once, a sudden strike, and what's being called a simultaneous sell-off of trillions with an S, worth of US government debt in treasuries. And again, going back to what I said earlier, it's being dubbed as Night of the Shift, right? Again, I'll let you decide what you think is going to happen here. Will it be in October? That's when the meeting happens to be. I tend to don't think that they're going to do it on or around the meeting because that would make no sense. But who knows? Please let me know what you think down in comments. Until then, and we're still a couple months out from October, continue to stack, folks. If you don't have any silver, think about buying some. I've got a link right down here in the description of this video where I buy mine from. I'm not saying that you should buy it if your lights are going to be shut off because you bought silver instead of paying the electricity bill, then don't buy it. But if you have some money just sitting there, maybe think about buying it, right? Not advice, because everybody's got a different financial situation. In other words, I don't want someone to go out and say, yeah, I bought $10,000 worth of silver, now I can't feed my kids, right? It makes no sense, right? Prioritize. What do you see as most important? Do you have extra money even after putting away your emergency fund? Let's say you have a 6-month emergency fund. Don't go spend your emergency fund to buy silver. Or if you're going to, maybe spend some of it, because being prepared is part of an emergency fund. Anyways, you know what I'm saying here. I can't tell you specifically what to do in this news. Take it for what you will. Are these BRICS nations just blowing a lot of hot air? They're not serious. They're not looking to dethrone the dollar. That's why we haven't seen a new currency announced. Or will there be a night of the shift? All of the sudden, these nations getting together and planning for more, for lack of a better term, a sneak attack against the U.S. dollar. What do you think about all this? Please let me know down below. I'm just going to leave this one here for now. We'll get into some other news in our next report. Please make sure you're subscribed. Very important news coming up in the following reports. And we'll kind of add to this as I try to piece more together. I did send an email back to my source, see if I can get some more information. Hopefully we'll see how it goes, and we'll see if anything plays out that's further going to support, this possibility, what I think is a very likely possibility. It's definitely heard crazier things. Anyways, let me know what you think about this, folks. Keep stacking. Bye for now. Peace.